right.
Got that going. Hello, Hawkeye fans, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot Podcast here on hawkfanatic.com. Your host is me, Rob Howe, along with Scott Docterman from The Athletic. We are getting a little bit of a later start. We've got some internet hiccups. Technology is a wonderful thing. We are recording on Thursday, September the 29th, a little before 9:30 a.m. Central Time. Hopefully this sounds better for you guys. We've upgraded our equipment here. We're trying to become more professional. We don't look professional, but we're trying to act professional as Iowa football embarks on its biggest game of the year this Saturday, a big noon kickoff, which is 11 a.m. Central, and actually 9 a.m. in California where Fox is. So the big noon kickoff is a dumb name, but it only works for one time zone, Scott. Why? It just doesn't make sense. They need to switch that.
Well, everything revolves around the East Coast and the Eastern time zone, so that's kind of why they've decided to do it. But it's something that they've made they put a lot of equity in that time slot, and they're going to call it what they want. And as long as people watch, I don't think they care. It's kind of like the Big Ten is going to be the Big 16 in 2 years, and who knows? It could be the Big 17, the Big 21. We never really know. So I think right now we're in alternative facts era. So I think Big Noon, it's Big 11 here, and Big 9 in LA, and who knows what it is in Hawaii up to that point.
Yeah, Big 10 a.m. in the mountain time zone.
Yeah, Big 10 a.m. That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
We're going to see these reports. Dennis Dodd had a report yesterday about Big Ten expansion. We're going to see on the Athletic, ESPN, CBS, all these places are going to have, this information is going to trickle out here and there on conference expansion. And so we'll kind of see where things go. I kind of caught the Dodd thing in passing. What's it? More Pac-12 teams?
Yeah, he's got it listed as 4 teams that they're 4 colleges that they're strongly considering: Cal, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington. And part of that is to get get Amazon on board. And because Amazon actually offered more than CBS and NBC, and I figure if they could get one more time slot or, Amazon to hop on board, maybe that's the late night in Pac land. And but still, there is some resistance to further expansion, and I don't know that he's got everybody on board, and that's something that he could really he better find a way to ensure that places like Iowa and other schools jump on board, because we're talking about existential type situations here. Once the Pac-12 will cease to exist. If 4 schools jump to the Big Ten, those 4 in particular, then that the mountain areas, the Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, will then probably join the Big 12. And that just leaves Oregon State and Washington State to hold that flag, and that's not going to happen. So a conference that the Big Ten has shared so many ideals with for generations would cease to exist. And how does that alter the landscape of college sports? Is it good for college sports? I would argue that maybe it's not. So that to me is something. And then, of course, from the Iowa view, from the other views are, you're adding more schools. What kind of value are you adding? How much more are you piling on your student athletes? And, selfishly from a sports perspective, you really want to go out and play Stanford or Cal and not play Wisconsin or Illinois that are on your border. That's what it ends up being in some cases. So I think this is really something that needs to be examined and discussed thoroughly, and probably coming up with more of a unanimous decision rather than just willy-nilly do it for the Amazon bucks.
Yeah, once they killed the Rose Bowl, all bets were off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just basically spit in the face of history with adding USC and UCLA. So I don't think, when I look at it, there are endless possibilities in terms of where they go from here. And I don't think money obviously rules the day.
Mm-hmm. no question. And that's part of the reason why, USC and UCLA, whether Fox was involved directly or indirectly, it does change the dynamic of both leagues. It ensures that the Big Ten has a much more viable product, and one that's, as we saw, generates right around $8 billion over 7 years. That's significant. And, that's what USC and UCLA brings, and then what it takes away. And then, as you said, the Rose Bowl, the Big Ten has been a part of the Rose Bowl, has operated, in a trio fashion with the Tournament of Roses parade and Pac-10, 12 conference since 1947 on the Big Ten's end. And so you're taking away a lot there too. Now, I'll also say that with the changes in the college football playoff, the bowls are going to continue to be devalued, but still, it does end the tradition quite significantly when your ultimate goal is not to reach the Rose Bowl, it's to reach the playoff.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to expand, just go to 21 and have 3 17 pods.
If they did that, I think it would be a little different than that, Rob. I think because what they would do is try to do that. We'd have like your West Coast pod,
Midwest and then East, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you'd probably have
They could call it the Coolio pod in his honor.
Oh, exactly.
Rest in peace.
Yes. You'd have your Biggie Smalls division, and then you'd have your Quad City DJs. I was disappointed when I found out they weren't from the Quad Cities. I think it would probably be like 2 pods. It would be the West Coast, and then it'd be everybody else in the old Big Ten, and plus like Notre Dame. And they would ensure that the former Pac-12 schools all played one another. And you just kind of gerrymander the rest of the schedule together, and everybody gets like at least 1, maybe 2 of those Western teams, 1 at home, 1 away. And then, the one thing I thought that might, and I'm just speculating, of course, this hasn't even been finalized by any stretch, but is maybe you use your last week as kind of that Champions Week concept, where everybody plays, you kind of play according to your position in some ways, like, and you make it a mini playoff for the Big Ten championship, or maybe 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, and then you just kind of start looking at the matchups from 5 to 21, towards 20, probably not 21 can go fish, but and then you can start matching up some of those games. And I think that would probably be something that would make the most sense, but there's a lot of math there, and I did not major in math. It's very complicated, and I think all of those factors need to be thoroughly examined before they're voted upon and enacted. Yeah,
no question. And I think everybody's kind of on alert now after the last 2 years of Oklahoma and Texas, UCLA and USC. Now everybody's just kind of waiting for that next shoe to fall, and we'll see when it does. And it probably won't be the last shoe when it happens.
No, it'll be, then what would happen. And, specifically if those 4 schools join, as we said, it's going to be 4 others, maybe more, maybe 6 others would join the Big 12. And then you look at the ACC and say, okay, are any of you guys going to fight this grant of rights? And I'm sure ESPN will say absolutely not, because they don't want to, the SEC already has a strong enough brand. It doesn't need Clemson and Virginia Tech or Florida State, even though those schools would kill to join it. And it also has exclusive rights with the ACC. It doesn't want to kill that brand because it would any absence of a great team will devalue it. So I don't know. I don't know where this leads. I would just say the Big Ten needs to be pretty cautious and prudent. Jim Delaney was aggressive when he needed to be, but he also knew when to back off. I don't know the tendencies for Kevin Warren. I think it's bold, but I don't know that that's something that, certainly Fox doesn't care about this because they don't think that it adds value and they're not going to pay more. And then, this could just be an Amazon push, and I don't know if that's really worth it.
Nope. It's hard to know. I think they could probably have an eye on the Thursday night NFL Amazon rankings and kind of seeing what they do and how that goes from here. They don't. The good thing for the Big Ten is there's no rush, and they're not really in a position where they need to make a move. They can think through it, and make the best choice, at least how they feel at that time.
For sure. Because there is no rush. I mean, there's not like they need to get this in by whatever. I mean, right now, I think that solving the pieces of the college football playoff, whether it's enacted in 2024 or waits all the way to 2026, I think that should be the priority for the Big Ten and for all the other conferences. And then I think after that, it should be, the Big Ten. Now, because you got to, I talked to Barbara Wilson and Gary Barta about this not quite a month ago, about 4 weeks ago, and they were pretty emphatic that they did not like the idea of expanding, that they felt that they liked the way the conference was set up. It should all about be an integration right now with the two other programs in Southern California. This could also be a power play from Kevin Warren, and maybe this is the smart way to think about it, a power play to California to say, hey, back off the UCLA, or we'll just take everybody, and then the regents in California would back off, of course, and the Pac-12 would go under. So again, looking big picture at college sports, I'm not sure that's the healthiest thing for this sport. I think the fact that they just agreed to a playoff system with 6 conference champions automatically qualifying, I think that's more than enough reason for the Pac-12 to survive under its current format. So, but that said, if Amazon's willing to pay $500 million a year to get 1 or 2 games a week, there we go. I mean, that's going to be, you're going to see a lot of late night, maybe Friday night.
Yes. And stay tuned, as they say. So we're going to go from macro to micro and begin our discussion on the big game, big noon kickoff on Saturday. And for those that didn't see, the Illinois game next week is a night game down in Champaign. So adjust your schedules to that. You can get the yard work done on Saturday and then watch the Hawkeyes on Saturday night. But this week is a day game. Currently, Michigan favored by 11, Scott, that number. And I said this before we started recording. I'm on a Bet Rivers pick contest that I'm getting severely beaten in. So desperate times call for desperate measures. I have taken all 5 of my $10 free bets and taken the Hawkeyes plus 11 points. How did I do?
I'm in agreement with you on this because I'm not picking Iowa necessarily to win, but I think 11 is a lot at home. I guess I can see it being more of a backdoor cover for Michigan than a front line. I think it's going to be probably the winning team with, if anybody gets 20 points, I think that's probably a win. I could see it being like 17-3, I suppose. But more than likely to me is kind of what we saw in 2019, which was 10-3. And Iowa, one thing about Brian that, fans have really piled on, and in some cases unfairly. I don't think they've been giving him enough credit for some of the games he's called, but he always seemed to have one bad game per year. And maybe this year it's Iowa State, I don't know. But that year it was definitely Michigan because, they threw or attempted passes on like 21 straight plays in the fourth quarter. They were only down 10-3. They were inside 36 6 times. At Ann Arbor, they had opportunities to play what I call Ferentz ball and win. If that means punt, that means run, punt, run, and punt, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden you get a field goal, you get another field goal, maybe you have an interception, and then you put all the pressure on them. I think that's the type of game Iowa can win at and certainly cover at, is to do all of those things this weekend. But it's going to take something that we haven't seen yet from Iowa's offense. They've had a couple of drives. I'll give them that. I think last week that was probably their best week, but they've got to sustain them. And in a lot of cases, it's, hey, if they get the opening kickoff and it's a touchback, you start your series at the 25, they should probably get at least 2 first downs. Then you figure, okay, even if you get to midfield-ish and Torrey Taylor punts and he knocks the ball out at the 8-yard line, then you're forcing them to go 92 yards. And then without a big play, that's really going to be tough to do against this defense. And then you get into the back and forth, boring football that some people think, but it's winning football for Iowa. But if you can't get a first down and you're punting from your 27, they're getting the ball, they're 40, 42, then you're going to be playing from basically from behind most of the half if you do it that way.
Yeah, and I think people, when analyzing this game, are focusing maybe too much on statistics to this point in the season. Michigan's played arguably three of the worst FBS teams in the country, in UConn, Colorado State, and Hawaii. Just terrible teams. So how much do you value, the offensive output in those games, defensively too? But they really stacked up. And Maryland's an okay team. It's, jury's still out on Maryland. They have started quickly in other seasons and kind of faded from there. I think they're respectable this year. I think they're better on the lines. I'm talking about Maryland. But still, this is a huge step up in class for Michigan's offense, with a quarterback making his first start at Kinnick Stadium and a team that relies heavily on running the football against a team that does not allow teams to run against it. So I'm not sure you're going to get a lot from Michigan's offense here. It's one of those situations, again, Scott, going back to your point, where I think Iowa's offense needs kind of like those games that we talked about, the Mississippi State game, Penn State last year, just where you can make a play or two on offense that are the winning plays, and let the defense, special teams, flip the field, control field position, things like that's Iowa's formula in this game. And that's kind of what gives me confidence that Iowa has a shot here. And certainly I think we'll keep the game close.
Exactly. I think that, what Iowa had, the factors beyond final score, that really are going to matter: turnover margin, and field position. I think, the details, the fundamentals, the tackling, the making your blocks when they're available. And those are all things that Iowa usually is pretty good at. And what you said, I mean, Michigan's strength of schedule is 96th in the country. This is after playing Maryland, who is undefeated. And Maryland, to me, it looks like a bowl team. This weekend they play Michigan State, who does not look like a bowl team right now. I think Maryland looks like maybe a 7-win type of team, and with an explosive offense. It was within one score, and you look at the opening kickoff of that game where the ball bounced off the player's face mask. Michigan recovers and scores quickly. I mean, for the last 59 minutes, it was pretty much an even game. I thought Michigan was in control, but I didn't think that they were blowing the doors off Maryland. And then you look that they're playing in a hostile environment. We know what Kinnick brings to the field when they're playing great teams. J.J. McCarthy's first start on the road against a team that turns over the ball, that plays, physical defense up front. Blake Corum, and then you have the motivation factor. I mean, that was an embarrassing loss in the Big Ten title game, 42-3. And when you got Jim Harbaugh throwing flea flicker passes in the fourth quarter to really run up the score, that's something, you have long memories for that. And if the roles were reversed, I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa does something like that, just to throw a middle finger in the air. And now all that said, and then you start talking about the past, which is since 2008, Iowa's 5-1 outright and 6-0 against the spread against, top 5 competition at home. The only loss was Penn State, which was a tremendous game, by the way, in 2017, and they scored on the game's final play. Otherwise, they've been giant killers at Kinnick. Michigan hasn't won at Kinnick since 2005, and that was in overtime. So, there are a lot of factors that kind of tilt towards for Michigan. They're just going to have to come out and execute. And then I think likewise but it does come down to Iowa's offense being able to do something. And that's going to be the ultimate question, because if it can generate 2 to 3 scoring drives on its own, they got a really good chance of winning this game outright, let alone covering.
Yeah, and can Iowa's running game, which has looked better the last few weeks, continue to at least help sustain drives, make, because Iowa's been brutal on third down, and you got to figure that at some point they can hit some of those, but it's really incumbent upon Iowa in those early downs to do something, and being able to run the football is obviously huge in those situations. You wrote about this, I think, earlier this week. I didn't get a chance to read it, but some of the different blocking schemes, what Iowa's doing to free up the running backs and the running backs taking advantage of it, I think bodes well. I think it's something that can be sustained. And it feels like, and this is obviously going to be a huge test, but it feels like Iowa's building something with its running game at this point. It can hit a wall this week. There's no doubt about that, but I like where it's headed, or it has headed the last few weeks.
I do too, because what they're getting back to a little bit is what works and let's stick with it.
Right.
Instead of, this is a team that in a program and a coaching staff that prides itself on running the outside zone, and it's just not working very well. They're not blocking it very well. And I would say some of that is self-inflicted. I mean, and not only just because they're young and inexperienced, but because they're not offering any other looks to these people and to the opponent, and they understand the flow of it, and they're not doing any misdirection off of it. So therefore, it's easy to recognize for the opponent. But inside zone is quick hitting, and certainly the counter is as well. And if you're not expecting it, and the counter comes, which you got a couple guys blocking down, and then you have the guard pull, and there's a good angle for that. I talked to Joe Rudolph, who used to be with Wisconsin, about why they always ran the gap style, and I wrote that a few years ago, and he's like, we just really like the angles of that. We feel like that is advantageous to us. And the zone works too if you've got the guys to run it. But for a guy like Bo Stevens, or when Jennings Dunker is in there, he's very, very big and physical. He's just technically not quite as sound as Stevens is right now. That helps them get leverage, move, have space, but have an opportunity to really crash down on an interior lineman. And that's what's opened up a lot of these holes in the inside for LaShawn Williams, who I think has been really good when he's played. Caleb Johnson looks like his trajectory is just sky high. And Gavin Williams hasn't been able to show it yet necessarily, but I think he's really, he is the steady performer of the group. So that trio of running backs, I think, benefit from this. But Michigan's not stupid either. Michigan understands what Iowa can do, and its limitations are so extreme that they'll probably say, okay, well, we're going to try to overload the interior. And so Iowa may have to go to more to outside zone just to see if that can, if they can break that out. So it's going to be this cat and mouse yin and yang, for the better part of 2.5 quarters before things really start to settle down.
Yeah, and I thought for the most part, still a work in progress, Iowa's offense, but for the most part at Rutgers, it took what was given to it. And I know there was consternation and hand-wringing about not getting the ball to the wide receivers. Would have liked to seen a little bit more to the wide receivers, but Rutgers was giving the underneath routes to the tight ends, and Iowa took advantage. If you can get the ball in Sam Laporta's hands consistently, that's fine with me. I mean, he's as much of a playmaker, if not more of a playmaker, than anybody at wide receiver right now, maybe with the exception of Arlen Bruce. And I saw some concepts. I mean, they ran a nice concept with Laporta running underneath of Lachey on Lachey's longer catch. Just some some things that you're seeing develop that they're building off of as the season goes on. And I think Michigan now, as you said, Scott, they've seen a lot of these things. Does Iowa have counters, not the counter run, but counters if Michigan takes some of those things away?
Oh, you're right. Absolutely. And it does have a counter punch in the offense, and can it excise those? The strength of Michigan's defense to me is its line. There's a couple of really good players up front. Moore and Mozzie Smith are outstanding players. They're all Big Ten caliber players. And then its cornerbacks are outstanding as well. That's going to be tough for the receivers again. Now, I thought against Rutgers that Spencer looked pretty good. I thought that was a confident game for him. He was 11 of 17. That's very efficient. I thought he missed on a throw, and it was actually a read more than a throw. Excuse me. And it was,
Gesundheit.
thank you. um, and he knew it as soon as he threw it. And I had my binoculars on this one, at that very moment from the press box at Rutgers, and he threw kind of more of a I don't know, it was a fade, more of a go route to the contested ball in the corner of the end zone for Sam Laporta, who probably could have pulled it down, but it was a tough catch if he would have, and didn't. But running in front of him was a shallow cross by Arlen Bruce, and it was a great concept. You've got to give your props. If we're going to diss Brian Ferentz, we got to give him his props when he's good. And that was a great concept. He was wide open. Spencer missed him, and he walked off the field. He was mad, and he was asked the other day about it. And what were you mad because of the throw? He's like, no, I was mad because I missed the read. He was wide open, and it's all on me. And it's true. I mean, that if that wouldn't have been a touchdown, it would have got him probably down to the 1 yard line. They wouldn't have had to kick a field goal. They would have probably punched it in, and so he would have been 31-10 instead of whatever. So that I like the concepts. The problem has been their personnel. Without Keegan Johnson. That's a guy who kind of takes the top off the defense a little bit. We haven't seen anything with Jacob Bostic. And so I don't even know if he's in Iowa City anymore, the way things, it just kind of evaporates. So you just kind of wonder, all right, they're going to have to do something here. Is that get Brody Breck down the field, throw it as far as you can, and Spencer Ward knows he can throw it 70 yards in the air. Just to scare them, just to say, okay, I don't care if he catches it or not. We're just going to make this play, throw it, and get these guys to respect it. I think that's probably something they're going to have to do as well.
Yes, counter, and it's like a batter and a pitcher. As the season goes on, you just have to keep countering what other teams are going to do against you and provide different looks and open up the offense a little bit more. I want to let folks know that support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That's sui.org. Thank you to Systems Unlimited. And we'll take a break now to hear from some more of our sponsors, and Scott and I will be back on the other side. Thank you to the sponsors, one and all. And we're back here. And one interesting aspect to this game as well, Scott, is two of the better special teams units that you're going to see in the country going up against each other. So I'm wondering if somebody gets an advantage there. I don't know if they can. It could be Iowa's oftentimes has an advantage here. I'm not sure it has much, if any, advantage in this game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when you got, Brad Robbins is one of the better punters in the country. Kickers, I mean, Jake Moody last year, I know he was, I can't remember if, when I'm the Big Ten rep for the Football Writers of America Association when it comes to All-American teams. And I know he was heavily discussed. I can't remember if he made the second team or not, but I mean, it was really close. And so you've got two kickers who are outstanding. You've got two coaches that put a lot of premium on special teams because they do matter. And excuse me. And so I think this is something that, Iowa's just going to have to be as good as it always is, because they'll take advantage of them if they miss something. I think, the kickoff return, it's something it's kind of strange because Kirk will harp on certain things that you kind of go, yeah, but, and I remember the kickoff return against Nevada, it was like a 35 or 38 yard kickoff return. And he was really harping on it. Yeah, our kickoff coverage wasn't very good on that. And you're like, well, the offense has a lot of plays that aren't very good. But it's true. I mean, that is an area where Iowa can excel. And so it's kind of like the kid who comes back with an A- and on a test in a subject where they've got A+ capabilities. You get on them more for that than the unit where you're struggling to get a D, and it's like, you know, everybody knows they can do better at that unit, but it's hard. And so I think that's probably the case here, that just be consistent, do what you do, let Torrey Taylor do his thing. Don't let him get a punt blocked. And overall, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, no question. And it could come down to a kick. And it looks like Drew Stevens is the guy now, Scott, unless he slips up and opens the door for Aaron Blum to walk back through. But he's looked good and seems to have the job right now. And we'll see. We've seen these games in Kinnick, these high profile games come down to kicks by Iowa's kickers. And we'll see if that happens and plays out this week.
Yeah, it's funny. We got to talk to Drew the other day and just bringing up, the Keith Duncan's kick. And, and I'm like, so are you aware of it? I knew he would be, but I just wanted to hear what he said to say. And he's like, yeah, I've probably heard about it a million times this week. And you have that, you have Rob Houtland and going back to even 1981 with Tommy Nickel, they, 3 field goals. They won 9-7. And in all 3 of this is what's fascinating to me is I went back and looked at the 80s and early 90s when Iowa was really in its heyday under Hayden Fry. And from 81 to 91, Michigan won the most games in the Big Ten among Big Ten teams. Iowa was second. And, there 6 times their game determined who won the Big Ten Conference, either outright or shared it. The Rose Bowl representative, and in all 3 of Iowa's Rose Bowl trips that under Hayden, they had a significant win over Michigan, 9-7 in 81. That's when Michigan was number 6 in the country, and it was on the road. And Michigan lost by half a game, from being the Big Ten champion. 85, we all know. I don't even revisit it. And then in 1990 up in Ann Arbor, it was 24-23. So Iowa won those 3 games by a combined 5 points. And they really established the legacy of Hayden Fry with those victories. And then, you think about Kirk and some of the games he's had with Michigan and the 0-2 game, and they'll celebrate the 0-2 season, team coming up. And, that's where bullies of the Big Ten were born. Was up in Ann Arbor, 34-9. At that point was the biggest loss by a Michigan team at Ann Arbor since '67. And even in recent years where Iowa, has won significant games against Michigan, and then was lost the last 2, of course. So this game really matters in the big picture, and the kicker is so significant to so many of these. I mean, you think of probably the 4 most significant wins all were determined, in part by a kicker.
Yeah, no doubt. And the 2002 game was as dominating as I've seen Iowa in my time. Against a blue blood program, and just how dominant Iowa was and was able to do whatever it wanted. The most stunning was 2016 after that Penn State debacle, coming back and winning that game. I think that was the most unlikely, at least from how you felt going into the game about Iowa's chances. It's certainly different now. I think people feel better about Iowa's chances this week than they did back in 2016. Like you said, it's going to come down to, can Iowa play clean football and do something on offense?
Yeah, and remembering those circumstances in 16, I was out in Happy Valley. They gave up almost 600 yards of offense to Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley. They had a great team. Chris Godwin was on that team. And, they were just a phenomenal outfit. And they knew how to scheme for Iowa. But 41-14, and it never felt even like it was that close. And you just thought, man, they're playing Michigan, who was undefeated, ranked 2nd in the country. That defense was like number 1, and Iowa's offense was just in a place just as bad as they are now, frankly. They could run the ball better, but everything else was, maybe as bad or worse as it is now. And so coming back, I remember picking my score as 41-0. I thought Michigan would just hammer the hell out of Iowa. And it was 10-0 early in the second quarter. And then, I kind of said, described it as Rocky taking Tommy Gunn down to the alley, and let's just get down. Let's just fight. And that's where old man Rocky's strength came through. to pull out the win. And I think it's still the most unlikely. Is even Ohio State, which I think is probably the most fun Kinnick has ever been, because, oh my God, we scored 55 points on Ohio State and blew them out. That's a fun, joyous occasion. This one to me is, oh my God, I can't believe they beat Michigan. I mean, it's just, they were not, and that just shows you there are a lot of aspects that we can knock about Kirk, and he's got a resume's worth to do that once in a while. But the ability to turn the page is something I think he's the best I've ever seen at any level, because to go from 41 to 14, 600 yards, you're scorched on both sides of the ball, and you're playing a better team, frankly, at that point, that had beaten Penn State 49-10. And to come back and throw your best punch. They had former walk-ons starting on offense against a defense that had 7 draft picks and 4 in the first round. And they won. And Akram Wadley was the best player on the field that night. That, to me, goes down in the Hall of Fame. That is, we could argue or discuss most important wins or biggest wins for Kirk or whatever, best wins. That one to me is the best win just because of what happened. I know people want to get into 6-4 because of the personal side of things, but that team won a championship. This one didn't. This team wasn't championship worthy, but when it needed to, it rose to the occasion, and man, it was something else.
And similarly, it's not a direct comparison, but coming off that Penn State game, it was pride, really. A lot of it was, can we get back up off the mat? And the parallel here is they got him. You mentioned it earlier. The Hawkeyes were embarrassed in Indianapolis in December. It was bad. And in talking, I know you talked to some guys this week too, and Spencer Petras said, I don't remember losing a game by 39 points. It just doesn't happen very often at Iowa. And it was interesting, some guys trying to downplay the motivation of that, and some of them embracing it, and then some of them kind of in the middle trying to keep it in perspective. I think that's where you need to be. You need to be in, okay, this is the team that, shoved our face in it last year. We can use that as motivation, but we still have to understand that these are different teams. But I get the sense that they are using it as motivation more than they will let the outside world know.
No question. Absolutely. Because it got shoved in their face. They look like hell on national TV. They got destroyed. And it's really been it's been a sore subject for this program. It's been bombed because of this. And then you compound the offensive struggles, and you look at it and go, okay, this team is, this program is whatever how you want to describe it. But I do think, what it does is, it motivates them, but it'll motivate them in a way that I think this is where Kirk is really good, in a way where they are going to be more in tune in practice. It's not like they're going to be more energized at kickoff. They'll be energized, don't get me wrong. But that only lasts until you get the hell knocked out of you about 1 or 2 plays, and then it just kind of fades. What it motivates you is, hey, we better listen up here, because if we don't get this right, they can embarrass us again. Or, hey, we're out on the practice field. If you can't get this block correctly on Mozzie Smith, he will destroy us on this play. And this play may be the big play. Maybe that's just the one block that might spring LaShawn Williams for a 15-yard run. And you look, in LaShawn Williams, maybe it's like the LaShawn Daniels play, where that physical run, he was running people over. That changed the whole trajectory of that game 6 years ago, because they were not in it until he started overrun. Then it was like, okay, Hawkeyes came to play tonight. And so I think that's where the motivation lies. This is something they had to live with, and now they've got them on their turf, and that's where, and I'm anxious to see what Michigan's reaction is. I mean, I'm sure Michigan understands that Kinnick's a tough place, but does Michigan look at Iowa and go, we just beat those guys 42-3 last year? They never even they talk about winning the Big Ten championship. They talk about beating Ohio State. They never talk about beating Iowa, like Iowa was the speed bump, and it was that night. But a flea flicker for a touchdown in the fourth quarter. that doesn't just, you don't just shake that off. That's something that if Iowa's up 24-3 in the fourth quarter with 7 minutes to go, maybe they run a trick play too.
Yeah, you wonder, Scott. I mean, we look at this as old dudes. Like we have a different perspective at this point in our lives than 18 to 23-year-olds. And that's the thing that we can't really analyze. What's the mindset of Iowa coming into this game, and how will it handle, it's facing a team that took it, just embarrassed it last year. And are the Michigan kids going to be overconfident? The ones that were in that game, or the ones that watched that game, are they going to be overconfident? Are they going to be like you said, wow, Kinnick is a tough place to play. We got to be ready for that. But are they really ready? Do they really know what that's going to be like? Does JJ McCarthy get in that north end zone after Tory Taylor pins them back at the 4-yard line? How does he handle that? Is there a pick that sets Iowa's offense up? Those are the things that I wonder about. And for me, I can't, when I analyze it, I can't say definitively this is how I'm going to break it down. But I really like how this game sets up for Iowa in terms of having the game at Kinnick and that advantage. What we saw last year against Penn State, even this year against South Dakota State in that opener, just the home field advantage. It's really impactful, and I don't think people are giving that enough credit. Maybe outside of Iowa, how much that can impact this game.
It's interesting because I've talked to some of my colleagues at the Athletic and in other places, and I think they kind of look at it as a litmus test for Michigan, and not so for Iowa, but because they're not ranked. But that, hey, this has the opportunity to be a quality win. That Kinnick's been a tough place to play, but it's about Michigan. The storyline is, can Michigan go to Iowa City and win? And they're playing against a really good defense, and if they can score on this defense, then they'll justify their position in the poll. It's not really about Iowa at this point, and why should it be? I mean, Iowa has already lost a game, and Iowa has struggled so much and been kind of a national punchline that it's just kind of like, all right, well, we'll move on. I do think though that you lose that, and if you're Iowa, this is a way to gain respect. This is a way to take respect, because you're the ones doing it. And as you said, Kinnick provides its own advantages. The 7 yards from the sidelines. Now they've kind of carved into a little bit of the sidelines behind the bench, which really was needed. I mean, I know the 7 yards was a big deal, but they needed that extra. But still,
yeah, when you're shooting photos and trying to get behind the benches, they needed it.
Yeah, exactly. But can you handle standing up within a handful of feet away from the fans who are screaming? Like, Melvin Gordon said, in the first, he'd been there twice after that he had a guy the entire game of the first time screaming at him, 100% committed, 100% committed, because that's what he told Iowa, and then he committed, went to Wisconsin, and he said that was in my head, and he had his worst game at Wisconsin, other than maybe the Big Ten championship in 2014. But
yeah, Trace McSorley told me at the Big Ten Media Day that it was the toughest environment he ever played in. Tougher than Big House, tougher than the Shoe. He said Kinnick was the toughest road environment.
Yeah, and you get that, and you get that instant feedback. A guy who's been in the NFL for a long time now. He played at Minnesota, Brian Body Calhoun. He has a hyphenated last name. And he said he was a sophomore at the time, and he didn't really play very much. But there were a couple of fans who just looked at him, and the whole game put booty in, and even though his body, but put booty in. And he said it drove him crazy. And that's the kind of stuff that you can do as fans to get in the opponent's heads. And as you said, if Tory Taylor punts the ball and they're down in the north end zone at the 3-yard line and they're backed up and that thing is loud, Can they hear the signals, or is there going to be a false start? And then on the next play, they try, let's just get some breathing room. And the center misses his block, and Noah Shannon wraps up Blake Corum for a 2-pointer, another safety, and the place goes wild. Are you prepared for that? Can you mentally come back from that play after play? Because I think Iowa, if nothing else, they'll be mentally into it. They'll play after play. They may give up some plays. They may give up a couple of big plays, but they're going to fist fight you for 4 quarters. If Michigan can do it, Michigan will win. They're the better team. If Michigan can't do it, Iowa's going to come out with a big win.
Hawkeye defense is the best unit on the field, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even though Michigan's leading the country in scoring, you got to look at the competition for that. They played nobody. I mean, South Dakota State was better than the 3 teams that they played.
No doubt.
Colorado State, give me a break. I think they beat them by 20 last year. So, yeah, they'll be able to do some things now. Because JJ McCarthy, this is a coming out game for him too. If he comes out and plays like he has against Iowa's defense, okay, he's made a statement himself. But you got to do it, and he's never done it on a road environment before. Certainly not like this. So, this is their first game away from Ann Arbor. It's a wake up call. I mean, and the difference between people talk about Camp Randall, the students don't get there till the second quarter for an 11 o'clock kick. Kinnick will be there, be full, because everybody will start drinking about 4 for this game.
Yeah, McCarthy got away with a few against Maryland. He got away with a few that he won't get away with most likely against Iowa's defense. You don't want to put too much on one player for the other team, but he, to me, is really how he plays is going to play Petrus as well, Iowa's offense as well. But I think if Iowa could rattle this kid, that could really turn out to be the difference.
Mm-hmm. No question. That's probably the biggest X factor, or that could happen. And his mentality is the intangible that really could determine the outcome of this game. Can he withstand it? Can he withstand Iowa's defense bearing down on him, Lucas Van Ness? And can he withstand the defense? Can they give him enough time to throw? If he does make a play, even a bad play, maybe even an interception, does he shake it off and move on to the next play, or does it live with him when he walks to the sidelines, everybody's shouting at him? So I think there's just so much there that's really exciting for Iowa. They also have to go out and do it offensively. And I think if there's one thing, if I was to talk from an Iowa perspective that I would like to see the fans consider, is don't get down on your players this week. Don't boo. It's one thing if it's South Dakota State or Iowa State or Nevada. It's another thing when you're on national television against Michigan. Michigan's good too. I mean, they're like 7th in the country in defense. They're going to force some punts. They're going to force some bad plays. And for Spencer Petras, he's just got to make sure he doesn't make the dumb mistake. He might make a mistake. He might throw an interception. They're a good team. But, don't boo him. Don't even boo Brian this time. Wait until the Northwestern game to boo him.
Maybe a Monty Pottebaum trick play early in the game. Let's try a different trick play.
Yeah, let's maybe have Arlen Bruce throw it because he was a quarterback in high school. Maybe throw it to a tight end or a receiver and not the fullback. Is that fair?
I think that's a solid plan.
Yeah. Maybe.
Do you think Iowa does anything like that though? To try to, I think you almost have to try something different.
I would be interested to see if number 3 takes a snap as the holder on a field goal, long field goal or something. If maybe you have number 3 back there instead of number 7 holding for an extra point, or a field goal. That would be something that to see if they pick up on it. I mean, maybe the special teams coach does, but maybe it doesn't filter down to everybody. And then you have number 3 back there. That changes the world. So Iowa used to be really aggressive on special teams and fakes. They haven't really for a long time. This might be the one. You never know. I mean, I kind of think after what happened last year, and the way that they got beat and how in the late in the game, there was no let up by Michigan. There was no, all right, we got this in the hand. We're just going to run the ball out and win 28-3. That it was, no, let's score and embarrass them. I kind of think that the entire playbook, even the back page is wide open for this one.
Here's what's going on in the facility this week, Scott. You've got LeVar Woods and Brian Ferentz both thinking, okay, we've got to come up with something to throw the Wolverines off, some type of trick play. And then they're sitting across from Kirk, who's saying, listen, we're still in the Big Ten West race. We're going for a championship. We can't be doing crazy shit. So that is the poll right now that's going on. And that's, you've been around this a long time. I have. Kirk is risk averse, but I think in a game like this, you're the underdog, you're at home, you make a big play like that and energize your crowd. Do it. Go for it. Don't hold back here, because you've got a defense that can make up if you screw something up. So go for it. That's my philosophy on it, but I'm not getting paid and it's not my job to coach.
Oh, exactly. Well, remember how aggressive they were? I think it might have been 2017 when they're at Minnesota and TJ Hawkinson. Maybe that was 18 for that one. But, they went to Penn State, and then they had a fake there. And then, then they had a fake at Michigan State. And AJ Epineza caught a pass from Colton Rastetter and all that kind of stuff. I could see something happening there. I could see, they do a lot of setting up. And that's one of the things I did from back in the summer when I talked to Brian, was the Ohio State game was all predicated on, let's do this and see how they react to it. And if they react the way that we think they're going to react to it, then we're going to come back to this and we're going to exploit it. And they did. That was the tight ends. And, I think that's the same place here. They, I don't know how many trick plays they're thinking about. Maybe it's one. Maybe let's just do this one this time. And then, but they'll practice it. They'll practice it really well. Is it going to be in the punt? Is it going to be, remember, I think it was 2015, the first game when Marshall Kane took off running with the ball and he got stopped short, but everybody stood up and cheered. They had a standing ovation, like, okay, new Kirk, he's doing something different. Then the next week, it was at the end of the half against Iowa State, and he was short, and it was like, oh, that might not have been the best time for it, but he almost got there. He was like stopped really short of the goal line. I think you throw it all out there. If you're in the fourth quarter and you got the ball, that's one thing, and you're winning. It's another thing if the game is up in the air, you fire your best shot, even if it exposes you on defense for a little bit.
I know you've seen these questions. I've got the question on the mailbag this week, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, or alluded to number 3, Cooper DeJean's ability with the ball in his hands. Had people suggest to put him at wide receiver, maybe Wildcat. I wouldn't mind seeing Iowa reintroduce the Wildcat. You've got 3 healthy running backs. You've got some other guys that can make plays with the ball in their hands. Maybe show different looks with DeJean back there, Arlen Bruce, whoever.
No.
Maybe that's a different look that could catch Michigan.
Anything would be great, wouldn't it? It's one of those where sometimes you just give up. You're like, well, they're not going to do anything. It'd be a perfect week to introduce that. I think I gave up on it a little bit when they were so depleted in 2016, and you looked over, and it had to do with Michigan. They had Jabril Peppers, and they're running him at running back, and they're running him at linebacker, at safety, and all these great positions. And you're looking at Desmond King thinking, you need to be a wide receiver. And oh no, you value him too much on defense. And I look at Cooper, and I think Cooper could play a lot of different positions. He could play quarterback. I mean, him as a Wildcat, sign me up. But that's not the way it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I kind of was introduced to it I think for the first time back in 2004 when Bob Sanders was lobbying to play running. They were out of running backs, and he
Yeah.
played running back in high school, and he could have played running back in college, and they wouldn't let him do it. And now Bob was banged up a lot and hurt a lot. So I get you don't want to take the best player on your team and injure him playing him both ways. But that one seemed so obvious to me, and they didn't do it. So I'm like, as the years have passed, when these suggestions come up, that's the one I go back to and say, well, they didn't do that. I think they're going to be reluctant to do it with other guys moving forward.
Yeah. If I was to do it, and do it and mention it in a realistic way, because even though I think Cooper DeJean would be absolutely perfect for it, you can put him at running back, you can put him wide receiver, you can put him just about anywhere, and he'd be perfect because I think he's an outstanding player. I think the most realistic thought is Arlen Bruce, because he played Wildcat quarterback when he was at Olathe North, and he was one of the best in the, certainly in the Midwest doing that. If you put him back there and two regular running backs, and he can throw it because he's had to throw it. Maybe he's not Petrus, with a strong arm and all that, but you get that element in there, and that's the one thing they've never done from the Wildcat, which is throw the football. So, that would be something to see. But what do you do with Petrus? Do you leave him off the field, or do you put him at outside receiver? And do you throw the ball to him if you do throw it? That would be interesting. Probably look like Tom Brady trying to catch the ball, which doesn't seem to work very much anymore.
I know this discussion is probably exciting you as Iowa fans, but as Scott said, don't count on it.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Wrinkles. That's what we'll see. If there's anything, it's going to be a wrinkle, not a like, holy crap, they're doing that.
Exactly. Well, and it would behoove them to do it because if it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, at least it's on film and other people can go, well, we do have to kind of prepare for this. They haven't done this for a while. They only did Wildcat a little bit last year and it didn't work. So, but then again, it all comes back to the head coach and he thinks it's gimmicky. And well, sometimes you got to get gimmicky if you're ranked 131st in the country in offense.
Exotics.
Yeah. The Statue of Liberty.
Yes. Anything else we want to cover from this game, Scott? I think we've kind of hammered it pretty well. I think you had good advice during, a few minutes ago. Just be supportive of the team. I know that sounds kind of Pollyanna and, kumbaya, but seriously, the team's going to need a home crowd, and there's a good chance that Iowa goes 3-and-out on the first series, or a decent chance of that happening and struggling offensively early in this game. Just remember Penn State last year. Remember that this is a 4-quarter game and a play could be made later, and confidence is a big key. And if you're booing and helping the other team, that's not good.
Yeah, exactly. We've become in Iowa. I think that either it's just, there's so much frustration that every emotion is raw and knee jerky, and it needs to stop when you're talking about this, because you don't just, the expectation that this team is going to go out and score on a touchdown on its first possession. It's happened twice in the last 2 years. It happened against Indiana, and it happened against Iowa State. And that was right after a quick change, block punt. My anticipation is that, if your choices are what's more likely, a touchdown on the first possession or a 0 first downs in the first quarter, it's probably the second one. This is a good team they're playing. They're ranked 4th for a reason. And you're the underdog. You're not the expected to win. Maybe that was the case with all the other games, but you're not expected to win. They're going to need support. And I kind of mentioned this to our friend and my former colleague, Mark Morehouse, on Twitter yesterday, is sometimes this is like the most deflating season because of people just getting so negative so quickly. And, sometimes you just have to take a step back. And I mean, the season's a third of the way over. In 9 days, it's going to be half over. And then you're going to look back and go, oh, what happened to football? And, well, you didn't enjoy it while it's here. and you're going to have to, so you're going to have to take a step back and realize why you're there. You're there to support the team. You enjoy the team, and win or lose. Now, you don't want to watch them get blown out. You want them to have good plays, and maybe they win, maybe they lose. But I mean, I would like to see the temperature drop a little bit, because this is not a game. I mean, they're a double-digit underdog, so don't go in there expecting them to win, when in fact the opposite is what people are expecting.
Yeah, if it's 50-0 in the fourth quarter and you're upset, I get it. But let the game play out. And Iowa just announced the honorary captain for Saturday's game, and be tough to think of somebody who's more appropriate in this situation, Scott, on the 20th anniversary of the 2002 team. For my money, the best Kirk Ferentz team is 2002. Just an incredible offensive line, and loaded at the skill positions, and a really good defense, and all that stuff. Guys that went on to the NFL, and Brad Banks.
Yeah.
If that doesn't inspire you as a Hawkeye, I don't know what would.
26 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, led the country in passer efficiency, runner up to the Heisman, Big Ten championship, undefeated season in Big Ten play, the most dominant team by mid-November in the country. There's a lot there. And, having that reunion this weekend is kind of a statement for Iowa. Like, okay, we're bringing out everybody, they're going to be there. And well, the most decorated player of the Ferentz era is going to be the one in the locker room with the team at practice. Although I did see, how does Torrey Ewing count? The Big E. He's pretty damn decorated too, and he was at practice yesterday. But that's the great choice. I don't think anybody should complain about that.
Yeah, it should be a great weekend in Iowa City. You've got the Fox National folks here, as we talked about earlier. And this will kind of segue us into our pick segment, Scott. But this is an important game for Michigan in terms of where it wants to go this season. But if Iowa can get this one and get to 2-0, you still have Ohio State. The way Minnesota is playing right now, and looks like the class of the West, although we'll see. I don't think Michigan State, in hindsight, was as big a win, because I don't think Michigan State's a very good football team right now. And there's still a lot to play, and Minnesota still has to beat Iowa. But you get that crossover win against Michigan in the win column. It can change the complexion of your season.
Well, absolutely. You look at who Minnesota has to play this weekend. They have to play Purdue. Purdue is a scary team, I think. They're 2-2. They've lost 2 really close games to 2 pretty good teams who haven't lost yet. They didn't play very well this week, but we know what they have. Everybody's kept their eye on them, and we all know why. So I think in some ways, Minnesota has benefited, because Michigan State's going to go from an 11-win team to probably a 5-win team this year. And they're going to be the most disappointing team in the Big Ten. But that said, anything can happen. Look at Iowa last year after it beat Penn State and was ranked 2nd in the country. Hell, people had them in the playoffs. Then they lost 2 straight. Minnesota's certainly capable, whether it's Purdue this week, then a couple weeks later they go to Illinois. Illinois, I don't think, is a pushover anymore. They go to Penn State. That could be a difficult game. They play with Iowa, which they haven't beaten since 2014. PJ's never beaten. Wisconsin, they're not just going to say, yes, please keep the axe another year, mister. They don't do that. So, the season's not over. Right now, I don't have any problem saying Minnesota appears to be the best team in the West. No question in my mind. However, a lot could happen in the next 6 weeks.
Technically, we're still in September, even though Saturday's games will be in October. So Still a lot to play. Let's start with that game, Scott. What do you have that number at? Purdue at Minnesota?
12.5 right now. And so that's just been that's a big number. So I'm kind of curious to see, there's still a lot of injury questions with Aiden O'Connell and whether or not he's going to play. So, he didn't dress last week.
And they did not
Burton,
look good without him.
oh, I know. So it's kind of weird because this is a game I would stay away from until I understood. And because right now they're kind of in wait and see mode. If he plays and if he's effective in playing, not just hobbling or whatever, then that, I love the plus 12.5. Give me that every day. But if he doesn't play, then that could be a real challenge for Purdue, at Gopher land. But I don't know. I'm gonna bet on him playing, even though I probably shouldn't do this since I'm not using my own real money. I'm gonna take
Yes,
Purdue.
if you're betting this game, take Scott's advice and wait to see what happens at quarterback for Purdue.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take give me the 12.5. I'll take the Boilers to cover. And maybe they cover even if they Austin Burton plays. But if they have him, I mean, if he was definitely playing, this is like a 4-point game on a betting perspective. But give me the Boilers with 12.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take the points as well. Minnesota's had the Boilers number, kind of like Purdue's had Iowa's numbers, and you don't know. It's kind of how teams match up and circumstances and how games set up. But I think Purdue's a pretty good team, even at 2-2 when O'Connell plays. I think they're a good team, and I don't think Minnesota's roughly 2 touchdowns better.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, you want to talk about schedule? We did about Michigan. Minnesota's is even worse, if I recall. I mean, I think now that they beat Michigan State, it kind of is looks better, but they're still 109th in strength of schedule. So that's pretty bad. So I kind of think this is a Gopher team that still remains somewhat untested. Although I don't think anybody would have expected Michigan State to look as bad as it did the other day. So
no.
Speaking of which, Michigan State goes to Maryland. Maryland gives up 8 at home. Give me Maryland. I think Maryland might be a pretty decent team. They're still pretty undisciplined, as they usually are, but they've got some weapons. And Michigan State, I'm just not sold on them defensively. And last week, getting outgained by almost 300 yards. I think the Terps are better than even 8 points on the Spartans.
Yeah, huge spot for the Sparty. If they get waxed again, it starts to get ugly in East Lansing. You're already hearing a little rumblings about Mel Tucker's contract and things like that. That can snowball and go downhill pretty quickly. I'm with you. I think Maryland's a decent team. I think it showed that last week at Michigan. And I think 8 points is not too many to throw in this situation.
Yeah. Here's an interesting one. Illinois at Wisconsin. Wisconsin giving up 7. This is Bielema's first trip to Wisconsin since leaving, or not at least on the football field.
What time is this game? Do you know?
This is an early game, I believe.
Okay.
Let me make sure here. Yes, it's an 11 a.m. kickoff. So same thing with Minnesota and Purdue. I wish I could watch that, but no dice there. There's a lot of aggravation in Dairyland with the Badgers after last week and the way that they've performed thus far this season and really the last couple of years. It's almost reminiscent of what we're experiencing here. That people are, I'm not saying they're spoiled, but they want to see Wisconsin take the next step or not. But getting Bielema back, it really doesn't. I don't think there's a lot of emotion involved, except for some of the fans, because it's been 10 years, since he left. I think, and the players certainly don't give a crap. I mean, why would they? I mean, they were, if you're 18, if you're a freshman, you were 8 or 9 years old when he left. So who cares, right?
Yeah.
But I think Wisconsin gets back on track a little bit. I don't think that they blow out Illinois like they may have done a few years ago, but I still like the Badgers to win and to cover.
Yeah, I don't think Wisconsin is as bad as it looked last week at Ohio State. I think it was just Ohio State is really good and took advantage of a Wisconsin team with an anemic offense, and Graham Mertz has just not worked out. Um, I think for Illinois, Ken DeVito throw the ball to beat Wisconsin, because as good as Illinois is at running the football, it's going to be hard to do that against Wisconsin. And I think making Illinois throw the football is probably the key here. So I am talking myself into throwing the 7 points. So I'll be on your side on that one as well.
Okay. I think Illinois is much improved. Chase Brown is unheralded of a great player I think there is in the country, and I think we'll find that out in 9 days. I think he scares me more, from an Iowa perspective than even Blake Corum does. But that said, we'll worry about that one more next week. Rutgers at Ohio State, who's minus 40.5. I watched Rutgers play the other day. I think they're a tough team. They passed the ball better than I expected them to. I don't think they're as good as, certainly they weren't as good as their statistics showed. 40.5 is a lot, even there. I don't know.
This is in Columbus, right?
Yeah, it's in Columbus. Give me the Ohio State to win something like 56-14.
Yeah, it's a lot of points, man, in conference. Yeah, I'm going to go with you as well. Rutgers offense is not good. Doesn't have a running game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, Iowa was able to run the ball on them, and I think, okay, Travion Henderson will be able to do that. Ohio State will be able to do whatever it wants to do the pass game. On defense, Iowa whacked Evan Simon repeatedly. He was beaten to a pulp that day, and I'm sure Ohio State will do the same thing. So I think
the one thing you worry about is this many points that Rutgers gets a garbage touchdown late to cover up that. So, but there's nothing you can really do about that. I think you just have to go with the better team here and
right.
Predict that it's going to be very one-sided.
What'll end up happening is it'll be like 56-10, and then on the last play of the game they score a touchdown, and then it's I kick the extra point or even don't, but then it's either 40 or 39 point win. Northwestern at Penn State. It's a mid-afternoon game. Penn State giving up 26.5. I kind of wonder, when is the letdown going to happen for Penn State? They've had some big wins. They beat the hell out of Auburn on the road. Last week, they didn't cover, but, they won decisively. I kind of think that it might head to that direction again. Northwestern has looked so bad the last couple of weeks. And then, the first game they fought. They played hard. This is another Big Ten game, and Pat Fitzgerald gets his team ready. I mean, against all brain power, I'm going to go with Northwestern to cover. I'm not picking them to win, but 26.5 is a lot. Again, similar type deal. It could be 35-17.
Yeah, that is a lot of points. Again, these conference games that with numbers this higher, just tough to pin down, because you just never know. Penn State really hasn't had a stinker, although they didn't roll too big last week against Central Michigan. Northwestern has just looked terrible, but you have to wonder if the Cats can wake up and, put something together. I'm going to go with Penn State. I can't talk myself into Northwestern. They're just so bad right now. Then until Northwestern shows some signs of life, I just can't give it any credit.
Yeah, I know. I guess I'm thinking, well, I did see them in the opener against Nebraska. I don't know what that says, but so I thought, well, maybe we'll see. I don't know. It's Indiana at Nebraska at night. The Huskers giving up 5.5. Rob, what do you think about this one?
It's 5.5 at Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm going with Nebraska. I don't think Indiana's any good. I know Nebraska's not any good, but I think the home field, That 5.5 is a lot, though. I could see this being like a field goal game. I'm against my better judgment. I'm going to go with the Big Red here.
Go Big Red. No, I don't know what I'm going to pick
They're
yet.
both red.
Yeah,
It's a lot of red.
Crimson and cream. You remember when Tom Green got hired and he had T-shirts Crimson and cream?
Yeah, that didn't work out.
No, it didn't. He was pretty inconsistent. He had a couple great seasons and mostly stinkers. But he's not coaching in this game. Tom Allen is. There is some love, no love lost there between these programs. When a few years ago, when Indiana beat Nebraska, and they really kind of shoved it in their nose because Scott Frost in particular is like, why do we have to play Ohio State every year? And why can't we play more teams like Indiana? And it was like, what are you talking about here? They got a new defensive coordinator in Nebraska now. Eric Chenander was fired after their effort against Oklahoma. But I'm going to go with the Big Red. I think Nebraska maybe finally gets a big win for Mickey Joseph. And I don't know. Not that it's going to matter. I don't think they're going to a bowl game either. Finally, we get to our game. Michigan -11 at Iowa, the only road favorite, and they're a double-digit road favorite in Michigan. I think this is, they're daring people on both sides of this. And as we've said, if this is an outright pick, I probably would pick Michigan. I think they're just because I think Iowa has a chance. I could see this coming down to the fourth quarter. Iowa's got the ball. Iowa has a chance to win. Can it win? Can the offense score a touchdown or a field goal to win or lose the game? I'm not there yet. Against a really good defense, I think they can, but will they? But I'll tell you this, that I feel pretty good about taking Iowa +11.
Yeah, I feel too good about taking Iowa +11. That's what worries me. When I feel this strongly, it's usually because I'm on the wrong side of the bet. But I'm with you. I just, I think the last 4 games against Michigan at Kinnick, I think the point differential's been like 3.5 points.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that extra point too. Even if Michigan wins by 10, you're still covering the spread. It's so inviting that it worries the hell out of me, but I'm going with the gut here and taking the Hawkeyes plus the 11. I don't know what to tell you about the total. I think it's 42 or 42.5 right now. I know, people were up in arms last week when that Rutgers and Iowa game went over. But if you think about it, it took 2 defensive touchdowns to take that game over. I don't know, 42. That seems like an under bet again. But I don't know. How you feel about the total?
I mean, I'm kind of like on the under for just about every game, and I know last week when Iowa scored that touchdown, and then of course when Rutgers did, it was 24-3. I thought, okay, this is going to end up being 27-3, and then or something like that, and then Rutgers kind of, hey, that's on the officiating. They missed a call. They missed a big call. It didn't matter really in the outcome, but it did on the points and it did on your bets. I don't like the over at all because I just don't know that. I don't know that I was capable of keeping up point wise. I think this is going to have to be a drag down in the dirt game, and it's one of those. Maybe the winning team has somewhere between 20 and 24 points. Do I see it even more than 24-17? No. But you never know. It could happen. It could be 24-21. I think of it more in the 16-10 range. And the last time they played a regular season game against these guys, it was 10-3 in Ann Arbor. The time before that was 14-13 at Kinnick. The time before that was 24-21 at Kinnick. Then it was 24-16 at Kinnick. But Ann Arbor in 12, it was a blowout. But Michigan had a really good team. So
Iowa did not.
Iowa did not in 12. It was a rough game. So I guess I like the under, and give me Iowa in the points. I I tell you what though, one weird aspect of this team is I could see this team winning against Michigan, and I could see it going to Illinois. I just think that this is the
I had
type
that
of
same thought this week.
it just seems like to me that Illinois has beaten Iowa once since 2000 when they actually shut out the Hawkeyes. Chase Brown's a good player, but again, that's going to determine what kind of game they give Wisconsin. But I can see them shutting down. They've been up on double digits on Iowa the last 2 years, 14-0 and 10-0, and then lost. So with Bielema there, actually in person this year, I can determine a lot.
I'm interested to see how Illinois looks this week at Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
That'll probably influence how I feel about next and how Iowa looks this week. These are, I think, two big spots there's a big spot for each of these teams.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I mean, with Illinois, DeVito's been nice. I mean, Isaiah Williams has been a really good move to the outside. He should have made that move earlier in his career. Again, Chase Brown, I think, is tremendous. They're running the ball better this year. They finally are more in sync in what they want to do. And defensively, they hit you. Are they a good team? No, but I think they're capable of being a bowl team. I think, to me, they look better than like Michigan State, and they should have beaten Indiana. They should be undefeated, frankly.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So that's the way it works. And so, if Iowa has a big win this week, they're going to have to remember they're going to have to go to Champaign, and it's not going to be – it's not the Lovie Smith, Tim Beckman Champaign teams that we've seen.
No, not at all. Bielema's definitely has them going in the right direction, and you can see kind of his impact on the program. It's starting to look like what he likes to do.
Yeah.
It's taking on his personality, and that's a good sign if you're an Illinois fan.
Yeah, and remember, they've beaten Iowa head-to-head for some recruits.
Yep.
So skill position players, I think Aiden Lowry I don't know if he's playing or they want him to play. And then there's that great big running back that picked him earlier this year that I think Iowa really could use. But
yeah.
So what about the recruiting front, Rob? How are things shaking up right now for Iowa? I mean, they need another running back. They're going to need some wide receivers. But overall, how do you think things are working out? Yeah,
this will be an interesting weekend. Some good prospects on campus for the Michigan game and moving forward. It doesn't seem like anything is imminent at this point. I saw Sean Bach tweeted that Seth Wallace is going to be up in Waverly tonight, or wherever Waverly Shell Rock is playing tonight. Maybe it's closer to here, which makes it easier for Seth to go watch Asa Newsom, but he's kind of the elephant in the room right now, if you will.
Yeah.
I think that's the one they really want to nail down. And then if they get him, they can kind of go from there, but not a ton of room left in this 23 class. So a lot of push still or 23 class, not a ton of room in the 23. So 24 is kind of where a lot of the attention is focused, and they'll have some 24s in as well this weekend. So it's harder now to really cover recruiting because of the clock is so sped up, and you don't know when kids are going to pull the trigger. But anymore, it seems like there aren't as many commitments in the fall as there used to be. It's usually now before the season starts, and then towards that latter part of the season as we get close to December. So kind of just keep an eye on things and see who visits this weekend, and kind of keep an eye on other visits that these recruits are taking too. That's important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, it is interesting to see how the clock has changed, as you said, because recruits are getting on practice for these unofficials now. I mean, we're seeing 2025 and 2026 kids that are showing up, even for some of these games, and then we're seeing they take their unofficials in the spring. They take their officials in June. Most of them, and to their credit, I completely agree with this, is that they go through the process when they're younger, and then they want to get it out of the way so they can concentrate on their senior year of football. Perfect decision, very mature, I think. And so, but then you've got guys like Asa Newsom who, he's got a tough choice to make. I mean, I don't know how much Kansas State is really entering his mind, but Stanford is one heck of a school. Now, and David Shaw's a good coach, even though they've really struggled last few years. But PJ Fleck has the Gophers rolling. Iowa's close, it's nearby, has a established record of success. All three of those are high academic programs, but how does he fit in? Where does he fit in? I think those are all valid questions, but and then he's trying to do that while playing and while enjoying your senior year, because you only get the senior year once in your lifetime.
And I was going to have some turnover at linebacker here in the next few years. So there's going to be, obviously it's different now with, running more cash. So that kind of impacts the linebacker usage, but he'll be able to come in and compete early. That doesn't mean he'll get on the field, but that's something, at least if you're the Iowa coaches, you can sell him on.
Yeah. Well, and the other part is, we didn't address it, is Justin Jacobs is out for the season, which is really unfortunate for him because
it sucks.
He could have, but what does he decide to do? I assume, I don't want to assume anything, but to speculate, it probably would behoove him to return to college for one more year, whether you probably, if you're Iowa, you probably hope it's Iowa. But, it would, it's a new world, so you don't want to presume anything. But let's say he does return back to Iowa. What does Seth Benson do? Does he decide, I'm going to go out and give the NFL a shot now? Or, he's got that extra year. Does he say, I think I could? And then you got that tandem. That's pretty good, because I don't think Campbell's going to use his COVID year. I think he doesn't need to.
No.
But and then if you're Asa Newsome, you look at that and go, okay, even if Jacobs is there next year, if you're good enough, you're going to play on special teams right away. And then you've got a chance to maybe fill that similar role, because I think he's a similar body, athletic ability. Jacobs is pretty good, no question, but he's got a similar body type that could play some Leo, when they go 4-3, could play inside eventually and play a lot of special teams. And there's some uncertainty, I would agree, behind them, other than Jake Higgins. Tyler Fisher has played some. They want to try to get him involved. He'll play a lot next year, probably start. Jackson Rexroth has played a lot of special teams, and they really like him. He's moved to linebacker. He's more the Leo type right now. And, if he was a little bit older, he might even be ahead of Logan Klemp, who's a fifth-year guy. So I think there's definitely a place for somebody like Asa Newsome, though. He's going to have that opportunity to work his way up.
No question. And I think it's pretty evident to him that Iowa wants him, is very much making him feel wanted. And that's important in recruiting. And and he's a smart kid, so I'm sure he's picking up on that. So we'll talk more recruiting next week as we get some feedback on these guys that are visiting this weekend. And we'll recap the Michigan game and look ahead to the night game down in Champaign. Have our picks. Did we give our I don't think we gave our overall standings on the picks. So give that to people so they know not to bet what I'm betting.
Well, I think we're only different one this week, Penn State Northwestern. But right now I'm 30-16-1, and you're 22-24-1. You're both were 5-4 last week. So, I've been lucky, no question, early in the year. And now's when the pool of games shrinks to, next week will be 6. Then we'll have 3 straight 5-game weeks because everybody's taking their bye. And then we'll get into November and they'll be back to 7 weeks. So I'm gonna, one of these weeks you're gonna try for the Hail Mary, and I'm either gonna wipe the floor with you, or you're gonna catch right up. So
right now I'm just crawling towards the Mendoza line. That's my objective at this point. Get to 500. Get to 500. All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on Hawk Fanatic. We appreciate everybody listening. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting the show. And we will be back a week from today to talk to you again. Say goodbye, Scott.
Goodbye.